Welcome to Sip Juice and Color History. You excited?
Yes, I'm very excited.
All right. Today we are reading from Untold Stories of the Harlem Renaissance. Yes. And today we're going to read about Louis Armstrong. But first, do you know anything about the Harlem Renaissance?
The Harlem Renaissance.
So you're going to a grade.
I'm going to sixth grade.
Sixth grade, did y'all talk about the Harlem Renaissance at all?
Yes, but only.
Tell me what you know about the Harlem Renaissance.
What I know about the Harlem Renaissance is when it was mostly white people. When it was mostly white people, and there weren't a lot of black people in New York. There was a street called Harlem, and it exploded. It had an explosion
What kind of explosion?
where different types of music genres came out. Jazz,
Y'all talked about that in school?
yes,
Oh, beautiful.
jazz, swing dance, and then one of the most famous players, one of the most famous people came from it, was from born there. His name was Louis Armstrong. He played the trumpet, I think.
Okay. Okay. So you got some good facts there. Some of them are a little wonky because Louis Armstrong was born in New Orleans, baby. He was born in New Orleans. We want to remember that. But he moved to New York during a period called the Great Migration. That's when a lot of Black folks went up north because instead of working on the farms, they could work in factories and they could make three, four, five, maybe 10 times the money that they would make working on a farm. Isn't that something? So so who wouldn't want to go, right?
But do you know why they call it Renaissance? Because I never know.
Yes. Okay, good. That's a good question. Why do they call it Renaissance? All right. So we do have a glossary back here. So let's look in the glossary and see if the word Renaissance is defined. It sure is. Look at the bottom there. Do you see it? You
Oh,
want to read that definition so everybody
yes.
can understand what the word Renaissance means?
Here is the definition of Renaissance. Renaissance, a period when a large amount of art and illustrators
And literature
literature is
created.
created that causes people to think differently.
Yes, beautiful. So during the Harlem Renaissance, it occurred, like you said, in Harlem, but Harlem wasn't a street, it was a community in New York City. And that community still exists today, Harlem, New York. It's a borough in New York City within the state of New York. So some good points. Renaissance, a time when art and literature, well, literature is a form of art, where a time when creative expression is used to change how people view things. And it's usually a movement that impacts a large group of people, even the world. And definitely the world was impacted by the Harlem Renaissance. This was the first time that people, by and large, non Black people, had an opportunity to interact and engage with Black people in a meaningful and a constructive way through their art, through dance, through books, through music, through plays, etc. For the first time, there were plays where Black people were the main character, and they were good characters. They just weren't portrayed as some negative character, but they were characters that people could enjoy and that Black people knew about, like they may have been a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher, something along those lines. And this was the first time that that happened on a large scale.
And some people may wonder This was not during slavery. This was not when slavery happened. This was a while after slavery.
That's right.
But white people still discriminated black people. So that was the only way of communication with other races at the time.
Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, during that time, the 1930s, everybody primarily stayed within their own racial group or their own identity group. So if you identified as German, you primarily interacted with Germans. You ate German food, you listened to German style music, you dressed the way that other German folks dressed, you spoke German or German dialect or used German slang as others used, etc. Whether you were Italian or maybe you were a certain part from a certain part of Africa or
Pakistan.
Caribbean, Pakistani, what other Palestinian, etc., or Jewish, whatever your cultural identity was, whatever your heritage was, whatever your race was, you tended to associate it with folks of like identity. But the Harlem Renaissance changed that, and everybody began to learn about great culture. So today we're going to learn about one of my favorites because, like I said, he is from my hometown. Where is he from?
Our hometown,
You
New
were not from.
Orleans.
He is from New Orleans, Louisiana. And
So
he had an interesting childhood. So we can learn some things from Louis and be encouraged by his life. He achieved great success and had a huge impact, continues to have a huge impact on the world of music, and we continue to enjoy his music and those in his legacy who built upon the foundation musically that he laid.
also
Okay, go ahead.
people may also wonder at the time, how did black people like get the money for the music if everything was run like every most companies were ran by white people and black people would get underpaid.
Well, and that was a huge part of jazz music. Musicians were grossly underpaid, um, and work was limited. And actually, it is how jazz became an art form that was predominantly Black. The Black musicians could not get a lot of the jobs that the white musicians were getting. So the Black musicians, as they were developing this new art style called jazz, they tended to, guess what? Practice amongst themselves. Because when the other musicians were getting the jobs, they had to work regular jobs, maybe in a kitchen in a restaurant,
Making
so they could practice. So they tended to put practice amongst other Black musicians. So they learned jazz, they developed jazz, they became skilled jazz artists. How about that? Did you have a question?
and at companies they would make 50 anywhere from $1 to actually anywhere from 1 cent to $1, I believe.
That sounds about right. It was a long time ago. Things weren't as expensive. So $1 could buy a lot more than it could buy today. I have a question for you.
Yes.
Do you think that rap music and jazz music have any connection? Do they sound alike to you? You think
Yes.
so? Okay. Louis Armstrong actually practiced a form of music called scat. And some people say that it is very similar to rap music in that it actually sounds to many people something like rap music. Let's take a listen to scat music, just a few seconds of it. How about that?
That is very interesting because it sounds like rap music because you know how in rap music you may not hear this quite often, but they use they can use jazz, hip hop for the beats. They use pianos. They use a bunch of different stuff that you probably didn't even know they used.
So that was interesting, right?
Yes. It was.
Okay, you ready to hear about Louis Armstrong?
Yes.
Okay, so I think that's one of the first stories in the book. There's the illustration that we're going to color a little later. But let's take a short read about Louis Armstrong. Okay, I'm going to start reading and you follow along. You want to read some of it too? It's right here. It's right at the beginning. Turn one more page. Keep turning. One more. I didn't say go back. I said turn. You're not, you're not comprehending. You gotta think. There it is. What are you doing? Okay, so Louis Armstrong is one of the most influential. Louis Armstrong, trumpeter, singer, band leader, actor, founding father of jazz music. Did you know that he had all those titles? He was a trumpeter, he was a singer, a band leader, and an actor. Did you know that he was also an actor? What? I can't hear you. I can't understand what you're saying.
What does it say there? Oh, okay, okay. So if you look at the very
Top.
top of the page, it shows you what Louis Armstrong was.
Okay, let's go back. Louis Armstrong, trumpeter, singer, band leader, and actor. Did you know that he played all of those roles?
No, I did not. Louis Armstrong is one of the most influential jazz musicians of all time. His amazing skills and creative mus-
Musical mind.
still dominate jazz to this day.
Isn't that awesome? That still to this day, we still listen to his music, we still enjoy his music, and people still take his music
As inspiration,
as a guide, like a young musician. Like if you want to be a jazz musician, you would study his work. Okay, you want to finish?
Yes, I would finish. He was born in New Orleans, Louisiana, on August 4th, 1901. He dropped out of school by fifth grade. I'm in fifth grade, by the way.
He dropped out in fifth grade.
Maybe that's
So, okay, let's stop and pause there for a moment. Why do you think Louis Armstrong dropped out of school? Don't look at it. I'm gonna see if I put it in here. It is a great reason. Now, you said maybe you should drop out. What about you? Should you drop out of school? Let's hear some reasons. Give me your reason. What do you think would be a good reason for dropping out of school? What do you think would be a good reason for dropping out of school? Because you said maybe you should drop out. What's a good reason to drop out of school?
First, some people drop out of school at a really young age, and they can be very successful.
But what's a reason? Why? What would be your reason For dropping out of school.
To help my mom around the house when she's not home or when she needs help around the house. And a easy way to make cash is I have a bike. I just have to sign up for Uber Eats and deliver food, and I can make easy cash.
But what about maybe you want to be, what do you want to be when you grow up?
I do not know yet.
Okay. What do you like to do?
Play video games.
Um, well, you're not going to make enough money playing video games. But anyway, let's see why Louis dropped out of school. I want to read this part. He dropped out of school by fifth grade to work and help his mother pay bills. So he didn't drop out of school because he didn't like the teacher or he didn't want to do his homework. He probably wanted to pay. He probably wanted to go to school. He wanted to go to school to learn, but his mother needed his help. His father was not around, so it was a tough situation. He had a younger sister, so he dropped out of school to help.
And got to school from grade to work on medical bills. Sometimes after work, he sang on the street corners for coins.
For coins. He sang on the street for coins. Go ahead.
Louis used some of his money to buy a first real horn, a cornet.
A cornet, yes. Have you ever seen a cornet?
Actually, no, I've never seen a cornet in my entire life.
Okay, so we're gonna have to look for a cornet. Okay, I'll read the next paragraph. Put your book down, please. Louis was not a troublemaker, but unfortunately, he ended up in the New Orleans home for colored waifs, a home for troubled youth. So he got in trouble and he had to leave his mom's house and go and live with a home for boys who had gotten in trouble. So it's like a juvenile detention center. Did you know that he went to a detention center as a child? So he had some hard times. How do you think it's, well, you would think that since he had these hard times, he went to a juvenile detention center. You might think that his life would turn out bad. But it just goes to show you that you can have bad times. But if you work hard and you have a goal and you keep your goal, things can still turn out good. So, how do you think Louis, what do you think he did to help things still turn out good, even though he got in trouble?
Well, he had to help his mom pay bills, so.
But he couldn't help his mom anymore because he got in trouble and had to go at home. So he couldn't even help his mom anymore and his little sister.
How long would do they be at the homeschool?
Well, it might be years sometimes. So what do you think he could have done so that even though he got in trouble and he had to go live in his home, what are some of the things that you think he could have done to keep on a good path and still reach his dream of being a musician?
When you're in the home, you want to be as good as possible.
Okay, so maybe he was good. What else? Just think. What would, if you had, well, sometimes we get in trouble. And it said that Louis wasn't even a bad boy, but something happened. The story is that he was with his friends, and the friends were getting in trouble, so he ended up being accused of doing something bad as well. So
By the friends?
I don't know. I don't know exactly. But let's just read the story and know that even though things didn't go so smoothly, he still managed to reach his dream.
Unfortunately, we ended up in Louis Armstrong's home for colored leaves, a home for troubled youth. The home had a band, and Louis quickly joined the band. He joined a band in a troubled youth at
Home.
a
A troubled
troubled
youth home.
a troubled youth home at around 10, 11, maybe even 9 years old.
Yeah, and that's how he continued to stay focused on his dream. Okay.
The home he caught attention of the band director. He caught attention of band director.
So that lets you know what? He was at that home. He was practicing. He was
doing good.
He was doing good. He let the people who worked at that home know that he was serious about his music. Okay, let's keep reading. Let's keep reading.
Louis decided that he would become a professional musician, and that's how he actually went down the path of being a musician.
Okay, keep going.
The next year, Louis was released from juvenile home and got his first job at the dance hall. He got released. It's like getting is somewhat not the same. It's like getting released from jail, but you did nothing wrong. You were being good in jail, and you immediately get a job, and nobody asks you questions. And he was in there for a year, people. 1 whole year.
Okay, let's keep reading.
Let's get into it. He would haul coal by day and play cornet at night at the dance hall.
So that meant that he had a job in the daytime and the nighttime. And how old was he?
He was
13. It said 13 or 14. At the age of 13 and 14, he had not one job, but two jobs. And they were not easy jobs. Hauling coal. We don't even know what that means anymore to haul coal, but it was a hard job. Just know that. Okay, you want to finish reading?
Yes. He would dance. He played the cornet at night at the dance hall. Later, he performed at river boats that traveled up and down the Mississippi River. So that's like saying, when you go down the Mississippi River at nighttime, right?
Mm-hmm.
He would just be like on the boat performing.
Yeah, because the boats would have a band. Like, people who have money, if they want to have fun, they would get a boat ride. Or people who come to New Orleans, they still take a boat ride on the Mississippi River. And a lot of times on those boats, there's entertainment. There's a band, and the band is playing music, and people are dancing. And that's what Louis did. He got a job playing music on the boat. Now, at that young age, he had to be pretty good to get that kind of job.
In the early 1920s, Louis left New Orleans from Chicago
For Chicago
to perform with his mentor in King Oliver's Creole jazz band. They were a hit and began to record albums. He moved around a bit, but returned to Chicago and amazed the public with something unique: trumpet solos.
That was unique. At that time, musicians all played together. There was no such thing as a trumpet solo. But Louis was so good and he was so confident and he had the music in him and he wanted everybody to hear it. So he began to perform something new. He did trumpet solos. Have a seat. Go ahead. You want to continue?
Yes, I will continue to.
Can you find it?
Yep. Trumpet solo. This was a new jazz performance.
Start all over. Start that line all over.
With something unique. Trumpet solos. This was new in jazz as performance were centered around the entire band. Not one musician performed solos. He also sang a style called scat. People,
And that's what we just listened to.
yep,
Louis scatting.
Louis Scat. People said that Louis Scat was more than singing, but was like hearing another musical instrument. Rap is considered to be similar in a style to scat, even though it was invented over 50 years later.
Wow.
In 1929, Lewis returned to New York and performed in Harlem and on Broadway stages. During that time, jazz was a worldwide phenomenon, and Lewis was one of the top performers. He produced many hit songs such as What a Wonderful World,
and we still sing that song today.
Dream a Little Dream, and Go Down Moses. He entertained millions of people and became an international celebrity. He was also featured on radio, stage, recordings, and even appeared in several movies.
Now that lets you know that that man had some talent. You want me to finish up?
I'll finish up. In the 1950s, Lewis used his fame to speak out in support of school
desegregation. Do you know what that word means?
Apparently not.
It's not apparent, so you're saying you don't know what it means? Let's see if it's in our glossary. Oh, it is not in our glossary. So do you know what segregation means?
Yeah, when like a cafe, when it served, it would serve white people, but wouldn't serve black people.
That is segregation, and that's very good. So it could be a cafe, it could be a museum, it could be a school. It was schools. It could have been any public or private place that separated people based primarily on their race. Segregation could also mean that people are separated based on their gender. Boys sit on one side, girls sit on another side. That's right.
And it can be split in half. White boys sit on this side, black boys sit on the same
right.
side.
That's exactly
split in half, and then white girls sit on this side, black girls sit on this side, and it's split in half.
Exactly. And so if that's segregation, what do you think desegregation is?
I would believe to think that desegregation is where a white person and a black person could be in the same shop. They could use the same water fountains. They could drive the same cars. They could live in the same houses.
That's right.
Newspapers.
That's right. So desegregation is the process of changing things so that they are no longer segregated. Yes. So let's start that sentence all over and see if it makes sense to us.
In the 1950s, Lewis used his fame to speak out in support of school desegregation.
Yes. So he spoke out so that he said that schools shouldn't be segregated. All children should be able to attend schools together in the United States because everybody wanted to learn, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
He believed that the laws of this time could be changed and children of all races should be allowed to attend school together. He supported children of all She supported the civil rights movement and spoke against Jim Crow laws that limited the Black people could do or where they could go. Louis Armstrong remains an icon. He is continued as one of the founding geniuses of jazz music.
Very good. I'm going to read that last sentence because it's a powerful statement. Louis Armstrong remains an icon, and he is counted as one of the founding geniuses of jazz music. How about that? And as we said before, people still love his music and are influenced by his music, and musicians still study his style of playing even today. Louis Armstrong, thank you. We salute you. All right, let's grab our books, turn to the illustration, and now we're going to have some fun coloring what looks like it could be an illustration of Louis Armstrong playing that trumpet in a jazz nightclub, and men and women listening and enjoying his music and enjoying their time together. All righty.
All right.
great time?
Yes, I actually did.
Did you learn some new things?
Yeah.
All right. Are you going to come back next week?
No.
Are you going to come back next week? Good. I'll see you there. But before we close out, we want to say our summer affirmation. Affirmation is called, I love this beautiful skin. Julian, are you gonna say it?
Yes, I actually will today.
All right, Julian, go for it.
I love this beautiful skin. Summer affirmation. I love this wonderful skin that I made. Yours is magnificent too. Red, brown, black, white, and yellow. God colored us in the most beautiful hues. That's why I love this beautiful skin that I'm in.
Yeah! Woo! I love the skin that I'm in. You make sure you love the skin that you're into. Yeah! See you next week.
We're closing out. Bye.